So I think Natalie said it with the programming kind of being the XYZs is a great way to kind of segue into this. Is that this is the base. I don't want to talk about it for too long. I want to just kind of hit on it to get refreshers for everybody, and maybe some of our newer coaches, they might hear this for the first time and then can get deeper into it later on. You know, last year we geeked out on it big time. We split up into groups and talked about each thing, and spent 2 hours on it. This year we're hoping to get it done in like 10 minutes. So real quick with it, we can definitely talk more if you guys have specific questions. So, when you go to like the level 1 or you look up any energy system training stuff online, this is the graph that you see a lot. So this is relating power to time, so the amount of power that you're able to create as an athlete over time. And they'll talk about the different energy systems. Notice that I didn't write them all out because I didn't want Noah to tell me I misspelled it. So this first one's here is phosphogenic, right? This one's glycolytic and then oxidative. Those are the 3 pathways we talk about a lot, and it's hard to say that there's like a black and white for any of these. There's a lot of gray area when you're doing different stuff, but a lot of our training is built on this, and the concept behind it is that if I go into a 20-minute workout and I start at 100% power output and I'm in like this phosphogenic pathway, and then I, after a quick 10 seconds or 15 seconds crash, and now I'm kind of in this glycolytic and I'm able to hold it for like 3 minutes, and then I stumble. I actually don't get into this oxidative. I'm just like bouncing all around, and we're doing threshold training. So not having, and that's a lot of times when we test stuff. When we test a workout, it's threshold training. But when we're working out in class and we're really focused on our training, we don't want to be bouncing around. I want to have like one specific area that I'm trying to focus on so that I can improve in that area. And that's why on our programming, it'll say MAP, or it'll say CP battery, it'll say, lactic endurance or whatever. And so we're going to kind of go through each one of those main categories, talk a little bit about how we progress through them, and then also talk about like what you would want to focus on in your class as you're doing them. So the simplest one, which is kind of this real quick little area right here. And again, this isn't, none of this stuff is exact, but this is going to be CP battery. So CP battery is really related to like strength, power, and then how fast you can recharge between like mostly heavy lifts is what people think about. So there's really kind of 2 categories, right? There's the strength side, which you would call absolute strength continuum, all the way up to absolute speed continuum. Right, we can definitely talk more about that as far as strength relative to you, what you are, right? We have like grindy people versus explosive people. That's kind of where that fits in. And really all of our strength work goes somewhere in here. You could even say, some of our structure work fits into here, depending on where we're at in the cycle. The other side of it, right, is this like, how we recharge the battery. So now how fast I can go in between efforts. So if I do 90% of my 1 rep max power clean, how many seconds is it before I can do another one? Then how many seconds before I can do another one? If I don't let my battery recharge up to that 90%, I'm going to miss it. If I'm lazy and let it recharge too long, I don't do very good in the workouts, right? And you can see these in a lot of the EMOMs and stuff that we put up, or also like some bottleneck type workouts. A lot of times we trick people into doing CP battery stuff with bottlenecks, where like you do really easy stuff and then something that punches you in the face. When I'm talking about like a 200 meter run, 30 sit-ups, 2 squat cleans at 255, right? You're like, obviously the other stuff is just a buy-in for the squat cleans. Cool. So that would be like a bottleneck type workout. So that's our CP battery stuff. So you'll see that a lot in the strength and sometimes coming up in the workouts. Any questions about CP battery stuff specifically? So kind of the next little realm, and again, none of this is exact, but we're going to go into anaerobic. And all anaerobic means is that I'm going so fast that my body cannot use oxygen as a fuel source. Right, so I'm burning sugars in order to be able to make this. This is a high power for not a lot of time. Think about like not 33, 27, 21, 15, 9 Fran. Like that's getting into kind of some long stuff. But those of us who can do Fran in like less than 3 minutes, like that's exactly what we're talking about is glycolytic, anaerobic type workout. And so in order to get something out of this, you have to go all out. So anytime you see, ANA or anything that's anaerobic on the workouts, they need to understand for the class that they're going all out. That might mean different for different people. 57-year-old Denise, her all out obviously isn't the same as, Toby's. I mean, they're all out aren't going to be the same power output, but both of them are giving everything they can, right? So usually when we do cycles of this, we'll start, pretty low, like 10 or 15 seconds, and then, this might be week 1 through 2 or 1 through 3, and then we'll bump it into like a 20 seconds, and then maybe 45 seconds a couple weeks later, and then a minute, and then maybe, hopefully getting into a minute 30, and then we're doing it for 2 minutes. Right? If I was going to do that, this would be like week 10 or 12 or whatever. If I'm going to do this week 1, 10 seconds, does 2 all-out 10-second intervals really do much for me? No way. I got to do a lot of them, right? So I'm going to do like, 10 of these, right? So I'll do 10 all-out sprints on the assault bike. I rest a lot in between them. Like you're resting like 3 minutes or more, because these are everything you got, right? Everything you can to hit it. Could I do this with other movements like wall ball shots? No way. What does 10 seconds of wall ball shots do? Really nothing, unless you could go 30 seconds with like a 40-pound wall ball, maybe we're talking, but 10 seconds, no way. You're having to do stuff like with the quick recycle time, sprints, sleds, assault bike, that kind of stuff. You got some thrusters? Oof. Okay. Okay, so, now when I get to this in week 12, am I doing 10 rounds of 2 minutes on? No way. Here we're going to be at like, 3 rounds max. So I'm doing, 2-minute assault bike. I'm resting 5 minutes. I'm doing Grace. I'm resting 5 minutes. I'm doing Fran. That's like down here, right? Next level, right? How many people are actually coming to class that day? Not very many, right? Not very many. You got to trick them into these. Okay, so, if I had to like put some down, I would do 8 rounds here, 6. And again, these are just kind of estimates, right? None of this is set in stone. A lot of times I can't, make this perfect 45-second interval for some classes. When I say, 15 calorie assault bike right into 10 heavy wall ball shots. Some people are going to get done in 33 seconds. Keaton's going to get done with the assault bike so fast. It'll barely blink, right? And then, Paula's going to be on that bike for a long time and be there at a minute 30 or whatever. And that's not necessarily bad. It's just understanding it's kind of different. If you know your athletes and you can adjust it for them a little bit, awesome. Right? If you understand them enough to be able to make it where they could go out for more of that like 45-second, not get past a minute threshold, that'd be great. If you mess it up, no big deal. Understand that, for every one of these that I'm able to like really put the right prescription on an individual person in my class, I'll probably mess it up 3 times also. So it's no big deal. You just kind of work through them. Any questions about this anaerobic stuff? Does the rest, I shouldn't say go up or down, but just understand that the rest is always a lot more than what you're going. So if you're going for 10 seconds, we're probably resting like, at least 2:30 or at least 2 minutes, we'll say, on the rest. If we're going down here for the 2 minutes, we're resting like 5 to 10 minutes in between sets. Anaerobic work? Questions on that? Sweet. So the next one that we kind of get into right here is this MAP training, which we do a ton of, right? We'll call it max aerobic power, right? This is probably, the bread and butter for Koda programming, to be honest. And one of the reasons because the person who can withstand the most work using oxygen as a fuel source, not getting into burned sugars, 1, does way better in long workouts, and then 2, recovers so much better in competitions. And I'm talking about this on the competition side, but understand what that means to you as someone who's not wanting people to get burned out doing CrossFit. If they're doing aerobic stuff, they go home and feel good. If they're doing 4 workouts a week anaerobic, they are crushed. Right? You just can't, your body just can't handle that much. This stuff it can handle a lot of, right? The more powerful we're able to be while we're aerobic, the better we recover, the better we feel, the more efficient we are just burning fuel throughout our day, right? So again, our big takeaway from the MAP stuff is I use oxygen as a fuel source. Now, if we're starting kind of on a MAP cycle, we want to make sure that people can stay aerobic at like 50% of their power output. And then maybe a couple weeks later, we're going into 60%. And then, we're busting it into 70%. And then 80%. And then hopefully getting to where they can hold like a 90% pace and stay aerobic for some time. The times on these won't be the same. So like if we were doing this and we're going to focus on for, 2 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks, like a long aerobic session, maybe we do 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, and we would do 2 rounds of it at like a 50% pace. And granted, it's hard to tell people percentages, right? That's kind of a weird thing. How do you know what percent you're going at? But it should just be like what you feel is like 50% of your, capacity. Again, that's kind of a feeling. And then, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, we do 7 minutes on, 7 minutes off, and then we go for 3 rounds. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, we're going to go for 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off for 4 rounds. And then 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off for 6 rounds. 1 minute on, 1 minute off for 10 rounds. Right? So the rounds are going up. The work to rest ratio stays at that 1-to-1, but you see that the durations of them are actually going down. This keeps kind of the time frame the same and makes it clean for classes. You sort of see that stuff? So if you're doing a MAP workout, you see, okay, I have this MAP session going up, and I see that, I have someone who's really got an endurance background. They did a lot of running. They, are pretty efficient in movements. We'll say Cameron, and he's a pretty good exerciser. He's doing it, and I see someone who's really powerful, super strong, not really known for having a good engine. We'll say Trace, sitting next to each other, and I see that gleam in Trace's eye where he's thinking, Cameron is screwed. I'm about to kill him on this workout. I, as a coach, it would be optimal for me to say, like, hey, Trace, let's settle down here, buddy. Like, I need you to stay in control. Let's make sure we're making this training. Because I bet you that, Trace could beat Cameron for 1, 2, 3 rounds. But when we start getting deeper into it, Trace is getting out of this like oxidative stage and now getting hot and getting glycolytic and he's burning sugars. Now he's not getting the results of that workout when he's the one who needs to be aerobic the longest. Does that kind of make sense? Right, Cameron can go out a little hotter and he'll recover and come back from it. So you kind of got to watch that a little bit in your classes. This is probably where people get burned the most competing. This, I love making competitions in these workouts. This one, love it, competitions. This one, makes me nervous sometimes if people bite off more than they can chew trying to do MAP stuff. Still, biting off more than you can chew in MAP stuff is not as bad as biting off more than you can chew during pacing work. So these pacing workouts are really for people to learn a lot about their system. It's almost like, like reset, long, slow run, or fasted cardio kind of thing, and learning like how you feel doing different movements and different workouts. So it's really the focus of, kind of like this finish strong. We want to be able to finish strong. I would say like not hitting the wall is a big deal. And it's going to be, workout and movement specific. So if sometimes like people who aren't very good double unders, they're going to get hot doing double unders and they're going to have to really change their pace when maybe they're phenomenal runners. Right, it kind of makes a difference in that. So I would say when you see pacing workouts come out and there should be different movements all the time so that we're constantly learning how we feel during some of those. It's kind of like have some self-reflection in the back end of that for your classes. How did you feel on that? Think about that. The next time a pacing workout that comes out that looks like that, remember it. I absolutely love doing lap times on the phone. Sometimes that's a nightmare to get classes to actually pull this off. We have 50-plus-year-old people in here that have a hard time even pulling up the stopwatch function on their phone and have no idea how to unsubscribe the auto lock, obviously. So, it's just a nightmare. So, but that being said, you can really get a lot out of that, of kind of seeing those movements come up and helping your classes understand that. Questions on the pacing stuff? How about anything like overall, kind of what we're looking at as a goal? You guys got it. It's too easy. Okay, so going back to this being the foundation, right? This is just kind of the basic thing. It's understanding this, but remembering that it still has to be fun. It's still about the relationships, right? So even if I have the perfect class, if I'm yelling at everyone and generaling people around and barking out orders, and it's a bad experience, it doesn't matter if it's the perfect training. They're not coming back. I've got to give them a little bit of this, but make sure that the experience is the focus. Right? So sometimes workouts come up that I'll be 100% honest with you. I put them in there and I'm like, man, it is going to be hard to make this one fun in class. Like, this is a tough one. And I understand I'm putting a lot on everybody, saying like, hey, we got this structure work followed by some pacing. Maybe there's some Turkish get-ups in it, and you're going to have to try to make this a fun class. Right? So we're going to kind of break off and do a little Trey would love Turkish get-ups. He'll do it with every class. So we're going to break off into some groups, and we're going to work on come up with a couple different ideas of how you can make your workout fun in class.